If you're starting cycling to work or thinking about doing so, then watch this video. I am going to tell you everything you need to know. Starting with, you don't need to know anything. Not really. I mean, cycling to work can feel daunting. You might not want to start until you've got a certain bike or until there's a certain amount of cycling infrastructure or, I don't know, until Jupiter aligns with Mars. I don't actually know how often that is, to be fair. But the reality of it is that you can just crack on because cycling to work is not that hard. And don't forget that it's also fun and nice, that you can stop wherever you want because you don't need to worry about parking. So why not grab a coffee, which is effectively free because of all the money you're saving by not driving? Genius. So what's left to talk about for the next few minutes? Well, seeing as we're here, let me give you some tips. So what do you need? Well, a bike. Obviously, anything will do. It doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles, just as long as both brakes work and, crucially, are easy to squeeze, which might not be the case if you've just dragged something out of the back of the shed, but that's as much for your confidence as it is for your safety. Otherwise, make sure the tyres are pumped up, the chain is oiled, the gears aren't skipping too much, and if you're going to be riding at night or low light conditions, then lights, front and back, are essential. In terms of other stuff, a helmet is a good idea, and it's no hardship to wear one. And then otherwise, bright clothing, particularly actually, if you can, your shoes and your lower limbs, which might be counter to what you would expect from looking at everyone riding around in fluorescent vests. But actually, highlighting the lower limb movement is something that vision scientists recommend to improve your conspicuity. Yes, I spoke to one, so you don't have to. I would like to say, though, that you shouldn't let a lack of high-vis put you off from cycling, because your long-term health outcomes are better cycling without high-vis than they are sitting in your car, okay? The statistics back that up. Something I would encourage you to spend a bit of time thinking about, though, is where you're going to ride. What route are you going to take? Because often I think we can be very limited in our knowledge of directions and roads, because, of course, you only know the ones that you already use. And so if you've only been driving to work, that's probably going to be the one that's just fastest by car, which is highly likely to also be crap for cycling. However, on a bike, you are not confined to fast-moving roads. In fact, you're liberated to basically go anywhere because you will not get stuck. So personally, I would far rather take a slightly longer route in order to ride my bike somewhere genuinely nice. You cannot go here in a car. You could ride here, or you could ride here. Take my home city as an example. It is tough to drive through the middle. So if you want to go from north to south or east to west, you join all the other traffic squidged into big congested arteries. On a bike, though, there are no such restrictions. You can ping straight through the middle on quiet streets or bike paths, which you can be forgiven for not knowing about, because why would you know unless you've looked? So do a bit of research, look at a map. Google Maps often has cycling routes plotted in, or dedicated cycling route finding apps like Strava or Komoot will also guide you onto the best routes for cycling. Now, what should you wear? Well, anything you like, really. Normal clothes are good. I wouldn't bother with wearing cycling-specific clothing for a commute of less than 30 minutes or so. Certainly not anything that looks like it's been designed for cycling. Anything goes, and I think you can be comfortable no matter what. There is a slight issue with getting hot and sweaty, particularly if you live somewhere hilly. I think you've got two options here. You either ride however you like and just take a spare shirt with you and you get changed at your destination, or you ride really, really gently and try not to break a sweat in the first place. And at this point, I've got to say, this is one of the trump cards of an e-bike, because you can throttle your effort right back, let the motor do more of the work, and you can still make good progress. In terms of carrying spare clothes and things like that, I tend to use a rucksack or backpack for ease, and then I just pack light so I'm not overburdened. But if we are talking sweat patches, backpacks are about as bad as it gets. So some kind of on-bike storage, whether that's a pannier rack or a front rack, absolutely ideal. Now, if I was to recommend one accessory for your bike, other than lights, be a pair of these. Mudguards or fenders. Regrettably, riding through a single puddle could still leave you with a brown stripe up your back, which is not a good look, right out there with sweat patches, isn't it really? But a set of these will solve that. They will keep you clean and dry. Now, they're absolutely not essentials, but if you're buying a new bike, something to think about, and you can probably get a pair to fit just about any other bike. Just take it into a local bike shop and see what they recommend. Much has already been said about bike security, too much to recap here and now anyway, but let it be said, I completely sympathise with that feeling of dread when you have to lock your bike up somewhere and leave it in the street. Now, hopefully you will have some kind of secure bike parking where you work. If you don't, you could always try just sort of taking your bike into work and hoping that no one notices. But you didn't hear that from me. Now, if you do have to leave your bike somewhere like this, then a good option is bike insurance. Now, it's not a cheap option, particularly if the bike that you're locking up and insuring is already quite expensive, but it will definitely give you peace of mind that if some thieving scumbag turns up and steals your pride and joy, you can at least get a replacement. The other thing to bear in mind, not all bike locks are created equal. Now, I don't think there's much that could withstand a determined angle grinder wielding thief, but I also don't think that you will regret spending money on a decent lock. The last point actually to mention is AirTags. So if someone does nick your bike, you can potentially keep track of it and hopefully hand the location over to the police. Some bikes like this one actually have got dedicated places to keep an AirTag, but I can imagine that there's quite a few places you could store one on any normal bike. Lastly, just because you start riding to work, it doesn't mean you always have to, 5 days a week or whatever. However, I would say I think it's a really good idea to get into a routine, to avoid those days where you kind of feel like you might not want to ride to work and then cop out. Because you see, I think the human mind is a little bit sneaky and it's always trying to get us out of doing things. And so on those days where you might cop out and take the bus or drive your car instead, I think it then makes it slightly harder to ride the next time. So instead, why not just say, I will definitely ride every Tuesday and every Thursday, and then give yourself the flexibility to do what you like on the other 3 days. As I said at the start, cycling to work is not that hard. And hopefully, although I've given you a load of tips in this video, none of them feel like they're a barrier to cycling. But if you are still feeling a little bit nervous, why not have a look, see if there are any local initiatives where you can actually team up with someone that's already out and about and cycling, and they might be able to help make you feel that little bit more confident when you're on the roads. And while I get that it may feel a bit scary, particularly given all the stories that you can read in the press about cycling in cities, the fact is that cycling, as well as being fun, is just so much better for your long-term health and well-being than being stuck in a car. I mean, genuinely, it might maybe sound like a bit of a nutcase repeating that, but the science absolutely backs it up. So, good luck out there. Let me know how you get on in the comments section down below. I'll be very, very interested to read all your amazing positive stories.